Good morning and welcome to our starting of our teaching week. This year, 2026, our commitment to ensuring that we strengthen the way we're using AI, understanding AI, and we are starting off teaching week with a deeper understanding through an orientation of the UWI AI policy. All right, this is a 1 hour session that introduces the framework that governs the responsible AI integration across our institution. And this is a university policy which is owned by BOSS and BGRS. So it's co-owned. And so certainly we want to say good morning to everyone. I have members of my team. Good morning. I see members of my team are on the call. So I want to say good morning to all the settlers who are in the audience, and I'm so really honored to have a great team with me here this morning. I know that this is just 1 hour and we don't have a lot of time, but I know that many of you have demonstrated interest in understanding how this policy actually helps us. And so as we begin this teaching week, we recognize that simply sharing a PDF is not enough. It's not good enough. And so therefore we're going beyond the PDF. It represents our commitment to really providing multiple means of engagement to you, our stakeholders, especially now that we know that AI is being more prevalent. And so it is shaping our teaching and learning. And I want to thank you for taking the time out. We decided to start off with a focus not on features, not on tools, not on AI itself, but understanding our governance structure around AI. And so this is really one yes, best thing ever, Randy. Excellent, yeah, definitely. And so we want to do that. We want to just recognize that. Today, what we're doing primarily really two things. And I want to explain how the 7 operational areas within the policy and within the framework helps to inform our responsible integration and raising awareness, especially when it comes to teaching and learning and research. And also we want to identify institutional support mechanisms and resources for especially developing your course-specific policies, AI policies. I want to recognize that this is something that you will be required to do. The policy recommends that, and so I want to do that. I want to declare that there are slides within these presentations that would AI powered. It's AI powered, meaning that it may have been used. Slides may have been generated using AI from a particular database or data provided. And so you will see sometimes areas in which the presentation is actually designed by AI. All right. So we recognize that the policy was signed. This policy was actually approved in October by both the co-owners, and so we're really honored to really focus on this. And why are we doing that? Why are we focusing on the AI policy? We recognize that the framework exists because AI presents both opportunities and threats. And so the UWI position statement, which was approved, established the institutional stance. The framework operationalizes through different key objectives. If you have access, if you haven't had an opportunity to see the document, you should actually anyone has not seen the document, haven't downloaded the document? Yes, no. Have you downloaded it? In chat, you can let me know. Have you downloaded the document or not? Have you seen the policy? Yes, no, in the chat. You can put it in the chat. Yes, no. Have you accessed, seen it? Okay, some person saying no. Great. It's good to know. Great. Nice. Great. And so I know this is not, I'm not going to go through a very fine teeth comb or in granular detail, but I just want to focus on some of those areas. All right. And the idea here is to really cultivate AI literacy awareness, you know, help us to create our own governance framework and really establish and encourage responsible practices as individuals who are shaped by this. I think one of the things that I would perhaps see as a key takeaway from today's session is that is a mindset shift because we recognize that individuals may or may not be using AI, and there are persons who hold very strongly that they are not using AI. And so this slide captures on the left, you will see it says AI dismissive design, which is more or less a closed mindset. And what we're encouraging is more the open mindset. And so what it envision is that persons or faculty who have this particular mindset, their policies and their course outlines remain unchanged. So the students are not aware, they're not given guidance. And so students use AI without any scaffolding or guidance or information, and so we see there that that is certainly at odds with the UWI AI policy, where it really encourages you to include somehow you are encouraging the use of AI, and by the way, it's quite flexible. They are quite giving you an opportunity to make those options available for your students. So the idea here of AI integrated design is a sort of an open mindset approach where AI support, it never substitutes the core teaching, and there is academic rigor and validity that's controlled and maintained because you are setting the tone for how AI is used or not used in your class. I think the students need to know whether or not you will encourage its use or not. In terms of its application and scope, and so we do know the application and scope is not just teaching and learning, it covers administration, research, and interestingly, external collaboration. And so in terms of partnering with industries, in terms of research collaboration, we do know that data privacy, I encourage you to go through the policy itself. Data privacy plays a key important part of how we're using and engaging with various projects. All right. So most of us here would borderline on the idea of teaching and learning and research. And so certainly we do see the opportunity for that. All right. So there are seven operational areas. And these operational areas provide the opportunity for how AI impacts teaching and learning, administration, and it provides an opportunity for us to really rethink and reshape how we are addressing those aspects. All right. I'll begin by a deep dive and looking at each. I'll look at deep dive at each, a closer look. And when we look at academic integrity, we know AI can produce, AI can write essays, AI can, it does work that is biased. It may be fake or imprecise. It can be fabricated. So we do know in that regard. So it is important for us to really give a deeper idea so our students will be able to indicate how and when and if you are allowing them to use AI from that standpoint. I do know that the capacity building sessions for Turnitin, but even Turnitin itself, they will acknowledge that their algorithm is not it's not perfect, and so there are some false positives. And so one of the key things that we as Center for Excellence across the US, Canada, UK, they're encouraging is a need for us to rethink how we look at our assessments, at our course outlines, and to really um, update our course outline to ensure that and our assessments to ensure that we are doing and that the assignments are actually valid even in the age of AI. All right. Then we have the whole idea of learning and adaptation. Um, the idea here is that faculty, staff members are encouraged to really adapt and to students are engaging with the AI tools and they need support. They really need support. And so this is where UE the policy has made it clear that we ought to really rethink our assessments from that standpoint. And so we have prepared a number of support, settled. I know the library is working on training for literacy for students standpoint, but in terms of our support, we remain committed. And during this week, we cover a range of AI themes. I'll put that in at the end of the presentation. So if you haven't seen it, you can register. And so in terms of how do we make our assessment, how do we revise our assessments to ensure that it really takes advantage of um, um, allowing you as the faculty to have control and increased way of ensuring that students don't cheat and how do we do that? All right, so the idea here is to remain aware. I think awareness is a key part of the learning and adaptation. This artificial intelligence, and in fact, when we say artificial intelligence, we are focusing more or less on generative AI. We do know that you have agentic AI right now that actually impacts in terms and the workflow of many administrative activities. And so even from that standpoint, getting a clear idea of how your program is impacted or can be impacted, its quality assurance can be impacted, is a key part. So it changes over time. When it comes to research and innovation, I must say here that we ethics become the central part of what we do as researchers. And if we are not clear in terms of how the tools are using the data or how the tools are actually crawling the data or mining the data, and you're using it from a researcher standpoint, you may put your institution, you may put this institution in a lot of risk. So which is why it is encouraged that you certainly want to rethink how you're using AI for research. And while it may allow you to do certain things, we do recognize that privacy becomes a major aspect of through that whole process. I must say though that there are many tools out there, SPSS, NVivo, and all of these tools are becoming they're integrating AI within their application, and some of them actually use APIs, application program interface, from these chatbots. And so it becomes important for us to know that, and for important to know how the data is actually shared with these particular engines and so forth. All right, because more and more applications, we are seeing that is integrated in AI. Another section that's in the policy is the whole idea of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so the idea of diversity and inclusion, we know that the AI, because of the biased data that it has and draws on, we have to be mindful in how we crawl that data, how we prompt and provide the context. And so it's important for us to see here that the idea of fairness is a central theme coming from the policy. And so we ought to monitor that. We ought to be aware of even when we get information that is generated that we have to fact check. Well, in the news realm, you see fact check things, but in this context, we really ought to look at the validity of the data that's provided, and especially when it comes to the inherent biases that it may carry. All right, because the data that it's trained on is not always correct. It's not always factual. And so we ought to be aware of that. And while we're aware of that, therefore, we know that those equity will be an issue. All right. And so data privacy, obviously, we mentioned that previously, but we must protect data submitted to AI against our own policies, against our own systems that we have that will allow us to do that. And so we have to be very careful. We know in terms of student data, in terms of name, ID numbers, all those different things. So if you inadvertently share these sensitive data with AI, you are violating the data privacy and security. And so we really want to encourage persons not to include data regarding personal demographic data in terms of users, information, and so forth in the system, because it poses a risk. AI by far still remains a black box, and many persons, we don't understand how it works in terms of fully understand how it works, and so we ought to be very careful in using the tool from that sense. The good thing is that when we're using it, you must indicate how you're using it. And I think that sets an opportunity for even us to demonstrate it to our students, how we're using AI. And it's certainly an opportunity for us to see that UWI core values are being tested, because persons may generate things, and they may generate things that may, and they might claim it as theirs. That still remains a contested area when it comes to copyright law and so forth. But we know, I don't think there are any lawyers here, AI is not a human being, so it really can't really own. In some certain jurisdictions, we see the clear copyright being attributed to humans. So that remains something that is really contested, really muddy. And so one of the things that persons have been doing is things created by AI or with AI, because persons may argue that I am the human agent. I was the one who actually had to engage and use a context prompt, use my ingenuity, my creativity, and then I can copyright it. And persons certainly do that. But also, persons also see this as an opportunity to really say, okay, fine, you know what? I don't feel comfortable claiming this, but I can actually attribute this as an open using Creative Commons license. And so we know, because we know for a fact that the AI tools actually get this, sometimes get copyrighted information and makes it its own. And so that provides a more transparent way in some extent. All right. So we really want to ensure that there is some sort of attribution, some sort of area, because it provides you the opportunity to really demonstrate that accountability from that standpoint. And then we have the operational efficiencies. We do know that waiting or remaining abreast becomes a challenge. And the question is, what will happen if we don't take advantage of AI? So it's a tool like the internet, like social media, like all these different tools that may have disrupted. And so what will happen as an educator? You need to reflect what will happen from your standpoint as an educator if you don't address the social responsible use of AI. Even if you don't use AI, how do you sensitize and raise awareness to your students? And what we are recommending, the standard thing, is to really look at include it in your course outlines. because students are using it. Institutions are making this mainstay in their curriculum design processes and ensuring that persons can adapt and certainly improve on their operational activities that they're doing. Someone who's taken to do a particular report, they've done the report and they want to really find a different way to format it in a particular template. It will take them a longer time to do that. And so these are some of the operational things and time-saving activities that persons can do using AI. Of course, there are many others, but I just brought that as an example. All right. Any questions before we continue? Any questions? All right. So should I just move on, move along, move along, move along? Yes, no, yes, no, no questions right now. No questions right now. The questions will come at the end, I'm sure. I'm sure the questions will come at the end. The questions will come at the end. Thank you so much. So when we think of the ethical use, again, we just want to reinforce that the human agency, let's suppose that you're working in a team or you have a teaching assistant, and the teaching assistant, you told them, go ahead and create an assessment for me using this particular learning outcome and so forth. You still have that oversight. And I think that's one of the key things we want to reinforce, that human human oversight remains, an agency remains a key part of this, and you own it. I want to just stress these 6 principles adopted from OECD in terms of AI and ethics guidelines, and it really reinforces some of the things that we just mentioned. But again, I want to stress here that you are the agent, you are the one who is making that decision, and you can decide not to use and decide how to use it in a particular way. All right. In terms of developing your course specific, you really want to look at your learning outcomes. Because if you're going to encourage the use of AI, your learning outcomes, you really want to identify which outcomes require thought versus AI augmented work, because encouraging your student to just use it, it may just more or less encourage the sort of less critical thinking, less processing, and so forth. So you really want to rethink and think carefully your policy in regard to your learning outcomes. And so this is where you would define the parameters and explain the parameters, how or how not. You don't necessarily have to, but how or how not students are allowed to use AI for their assessment. All right. And obviously, establishing attribution standards, how they to disclose, and you have that embedded in each assignment, not just from the course outline level, at each assignment level. If you are doing, and even if you're not, it would make sense. One of the things that we've seen in the research, even from Philip Dawson and others, is the code. Your code of ethics for your class. I know in my learning, we do have the code that I can't remember what it's kind of escaping me. Someone can put it in the chat, that you have to agree to these policies. And we do see instances where students indicate, and they may just maybe take it as a tick box, but that has been seen as a sort of the affective domain that really informs them that I've made this concerted effort to indicate that I will abide to X policies and so forth. And so we ought to be clear about that, especially when we communicating to our students. And we ought to remind them, because hey, you haven't moved on. Sorry about that. Let me just switch back. Okay, so we're back to the presentation. So you haven't really signed on to the code of ethics that we have put for the course, and so we really want to encourage you to do that. And you keep reminding them the first week of the class. I think it's important. Academic honesty declaration. Thank you, Javed. And so we do see that as a key way of ensuring students continue to do that. All right. Simple one, and that's actually that was actually before the policy. We were actually encouraging that before the policy, a simple policy statement. Yes, Box, yes, definitely. AI is a tool and will always require human supervision. Will always, but we see a lot of things happening, even in publishing, where things are happening and people publish stuff, and where's the human agency for the whole idea? So, and so you have a simple classroom policy statement. You have them declare. You include that in every assignment, especially if you indicated that they should or should not. I mean, but it would make sense to do that. Acknowledging how to use AI, for example, would you allow Grammarly? I think you need to be clear for your students, because if you're not clear with your students with the use of Grammarly, when it's actually added or turn it in can flag it, because Grammarly uses AI it's AI powered. And so we ought to be clear with our students what we will allow. In fact, I do think Microsoft Word and other word processing tools are becoming much more AI. And so it can change the way your voice in your writing as the author sounds and so forth. So these are things we ought to honor code, yes, and doing that. These are things we ought to encourage. These are things we ought to really encourage our students to do. All right. I see we have a question in the chat wondering if and when we use AI, particularly the free tools, Notebook, Claude, to create posters or logos, does this become a public property? Questionable. I will not be able to answer that question, Hema. But what I will say is, when you use a notebook, the notebook logo is there, so persons will see that it was created with AI. And I think that's good, because that's a transparent thing. Because if you use a notebook, and I would encourage you, if you use a notebook, because Notebook provides a tool, is from is it Microsoft or Google? I can't remember. I think it's and Microsoft, I think. And so it allows you to actually use your own content. It's not a large language model. It's actually using the content, so you can upload all your course content. And so the idea of fake hallucinations actually is reduced. Microsoft, thank you, Freddie. All right, so and I found it to be quite powerful as an educator, because it tells me I can certainly control, the parameters in which it uses and so forth. I mean, the idea of having to be able to create slides for your class, or you can put your old slides and make it much more exciting, infographics and so forth. It's such a powerful tool. And I'm sure we will cover some of those. Those are actually covered in the course, the full course that we have, Settle 1002, which will be released on the 23rd of May. I don't know if you've registered as yet for it, but certainly you should consider registering for it. All right. I saw a question there. So I hope I answered your question, Hima. Does that mean that we give up on creative property if we use AI tools? That's a contested area, especially when it comes to the music and creative industry. And so persons have been using AI anyway. We've seen a lot of AI created videos. We've seen a lot of AI created. But the thing that lies behind this, Emma, is that you are the human agent. And so you are the one prompting and creating that context. So there's some sort of co-ownership. I think Sharple spoke about that in terms of co-ownership of things, how the AI certainly is the one generating, but you are the one who is prompting, and therefore there's some sort of ownership with that. And so I would really want for us to really look at that from that standpoint. And Rachel is saying, Okay, so Stanley's correcting us. Google actually. Anyway, we don't know yet who it is. Is it Google or Microsoft that owns Notebook? I can't remember, but that's a small thing. All right. Rachel is saying ChatGPT, for example, has a privacy policy that your data would not be added to their knowledge information banks. I don't, Rachel, I don't know if it's true, but they make these AI tools make their money, make their improve unless I think now they now have temporary charts and so forth where they actually indicate what we use in the temporary chart will not be used as part of our learning, but it's a tool, it's being used and they make money from it. And there's an idea of trust, whether or not you trust whether or not what they say, but certainly we do see that. We do see that. I believe that you should have to set this so that your data is not used to train the LLM. Yes, and you do have that option in ChatGPT. And there are, by the way, some tools if you register for the session on Wednesday, there are some tools that do not demand your taxonomy or by that your identity, various identity, your email, your user information. It will not pick up those information. And there are some tools, particularly for us educators, if you don't want to use ChatGPT, you don't want to use Claude, you don't want to use, but you really want to use tools to really help you improve on your efficiency. And so it really helps. And I know there are persons here who are using it. So Google it is. Google win the debate. So what room is there for studies of students' information behavior to influence or contribute to the existing UWI policy? I think, Richard, you asked the question in terms of research. I do know there are persons who are presently researching, but in terms of the existing policy, you would need to get proper ethics approval, explaining, how you're using it from that standpoint. But it gives us clear guidelines that you're not exempt from not doing what you should do if you had a typical research. And so that is something that you will also include, Richard, if you're doing your research proposal, how you intend to use it, and from that standpoint. I hope I'm being clear, my response is being clear from that standpoint. All right, so I think this is what we really wanted to do. We really wanted to just whet your appetite, whet your appetite, whet your appetite. Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning to everyone. I'm from the Sidney Martin Library. I'm a librarian there and I teach information literacy. The reason I've asked that question has more to do with both the library and the instructors as well. Perhaps I'm not trying to suggest that the university has put the cart before the horse, but in my instruction, what I tend to do is to inquire from learners, how exactly do they use or what do they do when they use or attempt to complete their research projects. And the feedback that I've gotten so far has been that the majority of students tend to use Google. A lot of them are not even aware that as they use Google, they're also now using AI overview. And it's a tricky question because when you invite them to comment on how they actually use search tools and search engines and so on, it means that some of them are inadvertently using AI and some are explicitly choosing AI. So the question about studying their information behaviors, it's something that libraries tend to do. I am persuaded to continue doing because it's through an understanding of their behaviors and their patterns that we can probably craft better policy, especially in respect of how they actually use the content once they get the content. Because that is another question that I tend to ask in my sessions. Um, there's, and I'll stop there for now. There's another question that I have, which concerns the actual databases and the use of AI research assistant. But
Yes.
I hope I've clarified the question.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have. And the answer is actually on page 12. It actually clarifies again, you ought to really make the students aware when they're using research, how and how not they should be using AI. And the student themselves should acknowledge. And so I think one of the key things, and I know the library is working on this literacy part for students, is the awareness of all of this. And so thank you for bringing that up, Richard. What's your next question?
The second question concerns now a number of our databases. Um, let's go with the most popular ones, EBSCO and ProQuest and so on. I just attended a training session from Clarivate, which now I think owns ProQuest, if I'm not mistaken. But they have actually delved into the question of the use of the AI research assistant. Now, not too long ago, you were chatting about, you mentioned the use, how people in their policies, we probably need the classroom policies, that is,
Yeah.
articulate clearly how people actually should use the assistance from these AI tools. And what we are seeing now from Clarivate is exactly the use of a research assistant to summarize the text for researchers, students, and researchers. Now,
Hmm.
that poses and it re-emphasizes the copyright issue.
Yeah.
Um, whose summary, and I pose this question openly in class, whose
Hmm.
summary are you going to take? Are you going to use the AI summary, artificially intelligently generated summary, or are you
Hmm.
going to go back to the old school and use your summary in your own words? And the question becomes, what does the teacher
Hmm.
agree to in the creation of their classroom policy?
Yeah. And I think, Richard, you've made it clear. I think that suggestion is an excellent suggestion. I think in especially when you're writing, there should be clear parameters in the use of grammar tools and so forth, because you really want students to develop those skills and competencies. And if AI is doing it for them, they're not developing the competencies. So we ought to be very clear, especially when it comes to foundational courses, how and so allowing them to use AI to do certain things, you may have to rethink how that particular assessment is done. I'm not saying that we have to go back now to the pen and paper as opposed to the tech, but a lot of institutions and a lot of faculty have gone medieval. That's one of the things they've said. Go medieval because we don't understand how this works and how students are using. And so, yes, your recommendation is very powerful there. It's very, very powerful recommendation in terms of whose work is it? Whose work am I assessing? And it's important for us to see that. And so, in the course, Settle 1002, there are some strategies that we will highlight. We'll also highlight some of those in Wednesday session. So do register because we want to really provide some strategies that faculty are using and they're getting results with those strategies. And so we do encourage you to do that. Tyrone is saying the nature of my discipline is to assess students' academic writing skills, which entail the use of grammatical and mechanical usage and constructions in part. I'm looking at the acknowledgement on the screen right now, and I'm concerned about students using AI to address the two areas. Exactly. And so you may want to ensure, Tyrone, that you are clear indicating to students. I think this is someone who may have said, okay, fine, you could use Grammarly, you can maybe use the word processing grammar tool and so forth. But you ought to be clear in telling students all work will be done by you, including any sort of editing and so forth. Because let's face it, because sometimes the students do, when they do their first work, they do give it to colleagues and maybe their peers to edit, but that's actually a learning process. And if you do it as in a class activity where they could exchange papers, then that becomes part of the learning process for them. But again, I think the clear thing here is we ought to be clear on our communication, our signaling to our students, what we will allow and what we will not allow. By only doing that, then we know that number one, you've assigned a code of honor code, a code of ethics. So the class, you've had acknowledgement indicating if they did use, and you can go back. In fact, if you do want to encourage the mixed use or whatever, you may actually ask the students to include the prompts that they use. And so that in a way can be a way for you to test their critical thinking skills in how they're asking and prompting the tool to actually assist them in doing their work. All right, so Krista is saying, all right, yeah, so Chris test them make why the output is edited the way, so just one possible strategy. Yes, Krista, that's certainly. And other is back to proctored exams. Yes, medieval going back. Another concern, Tyrone, hold the mic, man. Hold the mic, hold the mic. Hold the mic, Tyrone. I'll pass the mic to you. Another concern I must state is the since universities co-owners haven't already approved this framework, then it seems that the AI is here to stay. It is here to stay. One of earlier slides reflect learning outcomes that require original thought versus AI-augmented work. This seems highly idealistic for teaching staff to. What I was saying here, Tyrone, is looking at your learning outcomes, and if you're going to encourage students to use or partially use AI, you should start with your learning outcomes. That's what I meant. To really analyze whether or not you would allow that to happen based on the outcome that you're looking at. All right. So, Box, do you want to go ahead? It's on the text in the chat, but go ahead. I'll give you a time. Winston, go ahead. If you can raise
Thank
your.
you, Dr. Hill.
Yes, go ahead.
What I was saying is that in our courses where there is usually one correct answer or one way to approach a problem, usually when the student uses AI to answer the question, they will get the right answer. But that does not mean that they have understood anything. And a lot of the time, they just give it to you the same way they program ChatGPT or whatever gives them the output. That's what they give you. And sometimes when you put that through Turnitin sometimes cannot even detect that AI has been used. And so I think the best thing to do is to limit, you could give them assignments. I mean, let the students go home and learn and so on. But I think you need to be able to examine them under some kind of condition where, you know, they can actually explain to you or do a small assessment where they can show you, well, oh, I've truly understood this.
Yes. Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
And Winston, you're so correct. And that's the oral or the viva is a clear way of persons reinforcing that you demonstrate or in class assessments. So that's certainly one of the strategies that's been recommended a lot now that we can take advantage of. And so thank you for that. Thank you for reinforcing that. And okay, Tyrone is saying no mic at this time. Okay, no, that's okay. So I really appreciate your questions. This is an orientation, so we really invite you to look at the policy, and really we here at Settle remain committed. We remain committed to supporting you. We remain, because it's really beyond the PDF, and so we want to provide multiple means of engagement, which is why we say let's start the session with a discussion. This is a discussion. This is a dialogue. So it's not just we giving you the PDF until you go read the PDF. Faculty inherently want to do the right thing, and they want their students to do the right thing. And I think that sort of dialogue, and so this is a space in which we create an opportunity for you to really raise your key questions and concerns, because doing that allows us to create responses and resources that actually target it. And I saw some of the questions already. If you really engage with us during the week, I really want you to encourage or engage with us during the week. that you will see some of those answers being addressed. And we provide consultation. We do have a course. I recommend you to register, CEPTL 1002, Generative AI in the Higher Education. It's a self-independent study course. Do it in your own time. We give you at least 5 weeks to do it. And you are the person going through and benefiting. Just to go back on something that I think it was Ellie Box, Winston, you mentioned. One of the things, and this is one of the things that persons do or don't do. Persons may say, okay, we are spoon feeding, we are killing the critical thinking skills. But if you are going to use AI, what some faculty have done is actually invoke what is called the prompt library. So what it does, we know that critical thinking is one of the skills we want students to learn even when they're using AI. And so what some faculty have done is actually around that sort of critical thinking, create a study buddy, create a support system where the AI is not doing it, but it serves as a scaffold. And so just as a student will be doing drill and practice, just as a student will be using different apps to do different things, you can create prompts that provide that sort of support to ensure that students, and you could encourage, hey, if you're using prompts, these are the only prompts you're allowed to use. And so I know this is one of the things that persons may or may not agree to, but this is just one of the realities that persons are using. Say, you know what, I don't want my students ethically, these are the prompts that I've developed for this course, and these are the ones, because I'm mindful and you just go in and say, without any guidance, to use AI. And without that guidance, you just go ahead. And I think what it does as well is demonstrate good prompting skills. And so I see Richard, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Hill. The thing that I have been using, our library, we've been trained. I think Clarivate did offer us an 8-week course on AI for libraries. And there was a section in that course that dealt with prompt engineering. And they identified, and even in my own research, I discovered that there was a third one. They identified a prompt framework. There are about 2 of them that they identified. And the one that I found on my own during on YouTube was one called AIM. Whichever framework you use, I think the essence of it is providing a persona. Without getting into details, I'll just say that it provides a structure for prompts.
Yeah.
And one of the points I was making to students just recently, I think in the Faculty of Sport, is that whether you choose to go with AI and prompt engineered searches, or you decide to go with the database, which uses keywords as opposed to natural language, but even that is changing. You're still in interaction with or in conversation with the database, or in this case, with the AI large language model. So you're in conversation, the prompting, the structure for prompting, and I've done it myself recently just to get in consultation with a lecturer in science and technology for us to get a rubric. I did the same thing. I followed the structure, and lo and behold, I found myself in dialogue, because what happens is you get, once you set the structure right, or you frame your prompt correctly, you tend to get feedback asking you for either to clarify, or if there's another area that they can assist you with. So it is a dialogue, it is a conversation. And
Yes.
Using prompt structures, I'd be happy to share those at some point. The structures allow for that kind of dialogue between the prompter and the AI model.
Thank you, Richard. Richard, you just give a plug to the session that we'll be doing on Wednesday and also the 1002. And so I really want to encourage persons to register. And this session is intended to be an orientation, raise awareness. And I'm really happy that persons are showing a commitment. Joanne, you're asking a question, will you be providing lectures? Yes, we have Turnitin, which has the option to do AI detection. Again, does it work? Not, it's not 100% work. I think one of the key things is understanding the responses because I know, for example, there are some persons who say, okay, if it has a score of this, a score of that, and you're focusing on the score, but you have not really looked at this, the way it's formatted and so forth. So you're encouraged to really understand how it works. And I do know that Turnitin training is provided. In fact, one was recently provided. We would have sent out I don't know how many of you attended, but it certainly is a tool that universities subscribe to. And there are others. And of course, persons may ask the question, can I actually upload student work in those AI tools to find out if it's AI generated? The ethical thing, my response is no, because before any student work should be put on any, number one, we think about the privacy issues. Number two, we think about consent. Before any student use Turnitin in the system, they are supposed to give consent. I don't know if you know that, but they are supposed to give consent. So simply just using AI to look at students' work, that is a contested and it's a very sensitive area. You should not do it because it violates the privacy rules. I know some persons maybe say, okay, well, let's create some feedback and so forth, but we have to be very, very careful. All right, Lisa is saying this is a serious dilemma. AI augmented student use in assignments means that there is something in traditional education that they're not learning. However, in the workplace, these restrictions don't exist. And so one of the things we are recommending, Lisa, is that we ought to be teaching the students the sort of social responsible use of AI. And so you're right. When they go to the world of work, they are using it and it's increasing their productivity. A lot of persons right now are using agentic AI to really streamline a lot of the things that they don't want to do. And the AI can do that. And education is changing. The landscape of education is changing, and we ought to really rethink about how we go about assessing our students from that standpoint. I want to just put an additional plug for the 71002. So it's on module 1, we look at the foundations and we look at the whole idea of how it is impacting education. Module 2, we look at prompt context engineering. Module 3, we look at AI enhanced curriculum design. And module 4 is assessment redesign. It says design, but redesign in AI age. And then we actually help with an implementation plan. So this is a 5-week course. And so we certainly invite you. I don't know if someone can put the link to register in the chat. If you haven't registered yet, it's on you're doing it on your own from that standpoint. I see Barney, we're assuming that students would acknowledge that they have used. What is the protocol when they deny, but Turnitin score is very high? Again, Barney, you look at because sometimes the AI can give false positives and so forth. I think getting a clear understanding of how it works, not looking only at the score. The score can be a trigger, but then you take a deep dive into the actual, what is it saying and so forth, and you analyze it from that standpoint. So you would have had your point on the code. They would have agreed to the code, so that they might have violated the code if they used it in the inappropriate way. So at least you have those tools and those declarations, because your course outline is actually a legal document. And so when a student agree that, hey, you have violated, so you have something that I have given you clear instructions, I've given you clear guidance, and you have violated that. So you do have some options there. And the policy, by the way, there's another option of the policy that's not enacted, right, which is the living document. That is still a work in progress, which is where you're actually operationalizing through guidelines and so forth. But we're not waiting for that, and we're providing some sort of guidance through our capacity building activities, because we recognize that we are here to really support you from that sense. And so we do have that course. I will also say that we have actually, because we recognize that we have to create multiple pathways, we do have the UWI AI Policy Framework Navigator. I'm going to give a quick demo. I'm going to give a quick demo of this. Let me just see if I could load up my browser and bring it over. So this is what the UWI. Are you all seeing my screen? Yes, no, yes, no. You see my screen?
Yes.
Are you seeing the screen? So in the policy, thank you. You do have the policy that you can download here, but you have a sort of overview as well. I think one of the interesting things is the training. So those of you, the 23rd, it starts on the 23rd, Junette. So those of you who go through this, you will get the opportunity to actually do a decision tree. The decision tree actually guides you in, should I use this task? And it gives you yes, no. You are working with a student personal data. What should be the answer? Confidential research data or sensitive research data? What should be the answer? Yes or no?
No.
No. All right. All right, so it gives you option that you can decide. So what type of task are you considering AI for? Creating course materials, academic proof writing, research data, and so you can actually do it from there as well. You also have a scenario training. I'm not going to go deep into it because I want you to go and look at the tool. All right, and so you have a situation, and it says you suspect the student in your literature course has submitted an essay, which was largely generated by ChatGPT. All right. This essay is well written but lacks the student voice. You see, voice? And contains some generic observations. You did not provide an AI policy at the start of the semester stating AI tools could be used for brainstorming only. You did, all right, provide. You did provide. It can be used for brainstorming only. All right. And so, what would be your most appropriate first action? Let's click on this. Is it A, immediately fail the student for academic misconduct? Is it B, run the essay through an AI detection tool and use the score as primary evidence? Is it C, schedule a meeting with the student to discuss their writing process and understanding of the material? And is it D, ignore? So we all get it correct. So you have opportunities to really engage with this tool. There are 10 of these scenarios to really help you understand, because for us, it's a dialogue. And by the way, you're having a dialogue with AI because this tool was actually vibe coded. I vibe coded this tool because of our commitment to really supporting you using various means of engagement. It doesn't have to be a synchronous session. Here, I did say that this is a 1 hour session, and I want to encourage you to do that. Another tool that's here is called the Policy Builder. So we did say you ought to build a policy for your class. So you can enter your policy. Someone give me a course. Settle 1002. And I'm saying that they should research papers. Policy level, I'm going to say prohibited. Set the permission level, permitted. I use, I could say prohibited. All right. Require students to acknowledge and so forth. So you go through this and then it will generate, you could also add your specific guidelines that you want to add. And so it will generate a policy that you can copy and paste. You can copy it to your clipboard and include that in your course outline or any online course space. You really want to provide that support for your students. So this tool is intended, it is a testing tool. It's still being tested, piloted. So if you do find any challenges, do reach out to me, leroy.hill@uwe.edu. And certainly it gives us an opportunity to strengthen that. All right. Something happened. I think something happened. Something just happened. Something just happened. But let's see how many questions. Where do we access this tool? Okay, let me give you where you can actually access this tool. So if you go to our website, set website, and you go to AI policy, let me see if you can put it in the chat. Yes, so Mark, thank you so much. So Mark has placed it in the chat. You can follow that. It's there. Joanne, are you able to access it now? Let me know. So certainly yeah. No problem, Nadia. No problem, Nadia. All right, so any additional questions? I just want to move ahead quickly because we did commit to having a tight 1 hour session. I'll just say here that the tool is intended to support you, so please take advantage of it. We've also put together a UWI Settled Curriculum Navigator. This is actually part of the course, and you may want to explore the AI Resistance Strategy Explorer. So it actually gives you some ways in which you can make your course AI resistant, or how you want to integrate your course from that standpoint. And let me go ahead and put in the link in the chat if you really want to use this tool. There are other tools that certainly allow you to do that, but certainly we want you to use it from that standpoint. So copy, and I'll paste it in the chat. So in fact, this is also highlighted in the course that you can also take. Thank you. So thank
Dr.
you so
Hill,
much.
excuse me. Were you
Yeah.
supposed to see your screen? Because
Oh, you're not seeing my screen. You're not seeing
No.
my screen. Thank you. You get a bonus point. You get a bonus point. I don't know what happened there. Are you seeing my screen now? Yes, Jeanette. So yes, this is the Curriculum Navigator. And by the way, this is UWI. This is another tool that I've vibe coded. This is UWI faculty only. It will require you to validate that you're UWI by giving your token. And the token will be valid, I think, 40 days or 60 days. But that's what's required. It's required for you to validate that you're a UWI person to use this, because this is only for UWI persons. All right? UWI faculty and UWI staff members. So it uses the EDU UWI to validate access from that standpoint. All right. I want to remind you that we do have our teaching week continues. We have AI in research. If you could put the link in the chat, Mark or Javed, so persons can register research tools. And then on Wednesday, we focus on course design and assessment design. Of course, when you say course design, assessment design is ingrained in that, but we wanted to be intentional about that in terms of how do you use. And I want to put in a plug here. I know some of you have already registered for the UWI Faculty Cafe. It's going to be an epic, it's going to be a special, it's going to be a one. We only do this one time a year, and you are not going to miss this. You really, really be missing this. It's going to be on April the 16th. We provide a light launch. We want you to register because we have to cater, so please register ahead of time. And I really want to thank my colleagues who have made this event such a wonderful event over the years. So I will stay in for a few more questions, but I want to thank you for taking the time out. And I'm going to maybe ask you to reflect. Someone can reflect. This is a notebook generated infographic from the data. Of course, only 2 resources actually used to create that. And so really invite you to really reflect in terms of how you as a faculty will engage. Look through the policy, spend some time with it. We recognize that we want you to take things at a step by step. I know some of the things that we require that you may want to do everything one time, but certainly it's something that you have to take gradually from that standpoint. Begin with understanding, a deeper understanding of the policy first, and then you can start with your course outline. And by starting with your course outline, you really want to start looking at your learning outcomes and so forth. All right, let me see if there are any questions. I can't remember if I saw all the questions. All right, Dr. James, Freddie, thank you so much. I know you have many more questions, and the questions will come when you're sleeping. Some of you will be dreaming of this, and so the questions might pop up then. Leroy.hill@ue.edu. You can pop that question in, and I will respond. All right. Javed is saying, we have seen similar transition before. For example, many early writing courses focus primarily on expository writing based on personal knowledge or opinion. Over time, universities shifted. Yes, universities have shifted. Students routinely search for scholarly information through Google database. So in terms of our, and this is clear, what Javed is saying here is that our approach has changed. It has changed. It has evolved. And so AI actually invites us to really rethink and further modify from that standpoint. All right, so, and Tyrone is saying UWI Academic Writing course actually offers a robust set of courses aligned to 21st century skills, which is great. We do not teach or assess based on personal knowledge or opinion. So certainly we're seeing a dialogue here. The session tomorrow, we have not placed a restriction. Dr. Harrison, we have not placed a restriction. You can certainly encourage. Yeah, Mark has responded. Mark has responded. All right. Any additional questions? Any additional questions? I want to thank you for taking the time out. We remain easy to contact. Look at we're on TikTok. You all know we're on TikTok. Please follow us on TikTok. Follow us on YouTube. This session will be on YouTube. And I hope that you had an opportunity. Of course, I did most of the talking because this is an orientation session and some of you had some questions, which was okay. Anybody had a question as we leave? Anybody has a question? Any questions?
Well, Antoinette here. Quick question,
Okay,
right?
Antoinette.
I know you said you all are not limiting anyone for the other sessions, but I am actually an admin assistant and I want to gain the knowledge in case I have to advise any lecturer who was unable to attend the sessions or the students. So I'm just making sure it's okay for me to attend the other sessions.
It's okay. It's okay. It's
Thank you.
okay. It's okay. It's okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and stop the recording. And then if any of you want to ask questions outside the recording,